All right, welcome back to the second video of our video series about creating a district energy system in nPro. We will now create the buildings for our district. So let me go to a example district here that I already prepared a little bit near Cologne. So we can zoom into this map here, into OpenStreetMap. If you have the buildings already on the map, we can directly import them. If we click here on the top on Define Area for Data Retrieval, we can then click around our district that we are interested in, click on the area, and then it would import directly some basic information of the buildings as well as the geometries. Here we have now the building geometries. You can also, of course, delete buildings if you want to. We can click on a building and then delete it. And we can then parameterize the buildings. So if we click on one of the buildings, we can click here on Edit Building. And there we find all the parameters that we can change for the individual buildings. So for example, we can change the floor area, we can change the building type. We have a couple of predefined building types here already in the list. And we can also select a subtype if you want to go into more detail. And from there, we can use default values also for the demands. If we do not have any estimations about the buildings, and we can use default values. If I click on this button, we will find in this example here for a residential building, single family house of this year here in Berlin, we will find a estimation for the space heating demand, for example. We can insert these default values if we want to use them. If we do not want to use them, if we have better values, we can enter the demand values for space heating and domestic hot water here in these fields. So if we have a specific demand, for example, kilowatt hour per square meter, we can input them here. If we have the total demand of the building in megawatt hours, for example, per year, we can also place the demand here. If we do not have the annual demand, but maybe the heat load only, we can click on the top here on heat load and then enter the heat load in this field. And if we have both, so the heat load and the annual demand, we can also enter both, and then the software will create a profile that matches both values. Let me show this quickly here. If we click on Show Profiles, there we will see the monthly values, for the demand. And if we click on Annual Profile, we see the hourly profile. So here we see that the maximum is at 8 kilowatt. That's the value that we entered, and that the sum of the demand is 16 megawatt hours. If we have only one value for the heat demand and not domestic hot water explicitly, then we can click here on annual demand, and heat load includes hot water demand. And let's make an example. So if we say we have 16 megawatt hours per year heat demand, and we have maybe a share for the domestic hot water as an estimation, then we can create the profiles again. And then we will see that the space heating demand is 12.8 plus 3.2, and that's the total of the 16 that we entered here. So then the input field would represent the total heat demand of the building. If we have a profile already in Excel, for example, then we can also upload the profiles. If we click on this upload button here, we can directly copy and paste the profile, for example, from Excel into this box. And then we do not calculate the profile for this building anymore, but we use the uploaded profile. And you can also change the day profiles that we use for calculating the profiles. So if we click here on this symbol, the sign symbol, then we find here the standard load profiles for, in this case, domestic hot water for residential building. And these weights represent or are used to distribute the energy demand per day to the different hours of the day. And you can also change these values if you want to. Here on the bottom, we have a few more parameters. So for example, supply and return temperature for the building, in this case, the space heating demand. You can also define retrofit measures and some additional parameters. If you are interested into cooling demand, you can also create cooling load profiles as well as electricity profiles for plug loads as well as for e-mobility. So this is optional. If you want to consider them in your calculation, you can also use these profiles then. On the bottom, we find the energy system. For normal district heating network, we do not need to change these default settings, so everything is unselected. But if we have, for example, a booster heat pump in the building, which increases the temperature from the network, for example, to cover the domestic hot water demand, then we can activate here the heat pump and say the heat source is the heat network, and then define the COP also, how to calculate the COP for this heat pump in the building. There's also an option, ambient air decentral. If I click on this one, then the building would not be covered with the heat network, but only with the decentral supply, so only with the air source heat pump in this case. All right, so let's click on apply. This is how you can change the parameters for a single building. If you want to change multiple buildings at a time, then you can click here with the right mouse on the buildings, and then you can also edit multiple buildings in one step. So there are many different options where you can change the heat demand, where you can change the different parameters of the buildings. There's also a possibility to upload data for the buildings. So to show this, I will first show you that we can that we have already the address data here from OpenStreetMap. So if I click here on the right-hand side on address, then we will see that the address is already here in the building information. And we can use this, if I click on one of the buildings, we can use this then to upload additional parameters for the buildings from Excel, for example. So if we click here on upload GIS data, there are two options. The first option, create new buildings. This means if we are on a green field where we do not have buildings in the OpenStreetMap, then we can upload georeferenced files. So for example, shapefiles or GeoJSON files. If we have, and in this case, we have the buildings already on the map, so we already imported them from OpenStreetMap, then we can use the second option, import data for existing buildings. And this means that we can, for example, also use an Excel file. And I will click here on choose file and then choose a Excel sheet that you see how it works. Let me open the English one. And this is quite a simple format that you can use here. So in this case, we have column A, which means street. Column B is the house number. These are the only important parameters that you should have in the Excel sheet. And then you can here, for example, click on the insert the street name as well as the house number. Actually, I think we have it twice here. So let me take this one here out. And then you have a couple of labels here on the right-hand side. So column C to G. You can write whatever you want into the labels because we can match them later to the nPro properties. We will see this later. And yeah, some values below the labels. This is all that you have to consider to create your Excel sheet. And if I click on save, then I can close this sheet and I can select it to import it. Click on Upload File. And there you see that we are reading the Excel sheet and we are looking for the address information and check if the buildings with this address is already in our project. And if it's in the project, then we can assign the parameters from the Excel sheet to the building information, to the building parameters. In this case, 42 of the 46 buildings in the Excel sheet have been found in the project. Here on the bottom, we see the data fields. And there you can assign then, for example, and say, okay, floors. With floors, we meant the levels of the buildings. You can assign manually the different columns to the parameters in nPro. And for example, you can upload the heat load, you can upload the heat demand. So there are many different options which parameters you can import from Excel directly. If I click on Import Data, it would then write the data into the buildings. In this case, for 42 buildings, we uploaded the data. And yeah, for the 42 buildings, we uploaded these 5 parameters. Yeah. All right, so these are the first steps how you can define the buildings. You can, of course, also draw your own buildings. If there's a building missing in the map, you can always draw it manually. That's possible. And there are also a few tips and tricks how you can work with the map and the buildings. So, for example, if you want to select multiple buildings, not only with the right click, but maybe with a simpler way, then you can click here on the left-hand side on this select multiple buildings field, and then you can click on the polygon tool, and then you can, for example, say, okay, I would like to select these buildings, and then you can change, for example, the height or the heat demand directly for these selected buildings. Yeah. All right. In the next step, we will draw the heat network and also do this simulation. And then we will see how we have the interaction between the buildings and the network.